In this episode, we were live at the Project Controls Expo in Washington, D.C. It was fantastic. I was joined by the Beyond Deadlines crew, Micah, Piippo, and Greg Lawton. It was great to have them join forces and do a combined podcast on this one. And Greg had to jump out halfway through to go and do his presentation. And we were joined by Olli. It was fantastic because we spoke about the various aspects of conferences and expos and what you can get out of them. But I'd be interested to hear your take on this one, folks. Something different. So, as we say, keep listening, keep liking, and keep paying it forward.
Welcome to the Beyond Chatter podcast. My name is Mike Piippo, and I'm a planning and scheduling manager. Here with me today, I have...
I'm Greg Lawton. I'm the CEO of an AI schedule management company called Nodes and Links.
Me? I don't know what I am actually. My name is Dale Fung. I'm delighted to be here with Beyond Deadlines, Project Chatter combining for this one.
This is the dream team.
It is a dream team. We are missing Val from Project Chatter, but that doesn't matter.
Hopefully Val doesn't watch this episode.
He'll be having massive FOMO right now. But this is awesome. This is exciting. You guys have been doing some awesome things. And it's been great to see the journey as well. But what are we going to talk about on this one?
Well, folks, we're here live at the Project Controls Expo in Washington, D.C. This is actually a first for me and Greg meeting actually in person. I think the top thing that comes to mind is just people who haven't been to expos, haven't been to big shows. You know, maybe, Greg, you can give a couple words on what do you like about it? What are your thoughts?
I think, well, what are expos and what they're not? What they are, number one, it's a bit of a nice jolly. You get to go out for a couple of days and see people. Two, it's actually an entire lecture series. You get to hear a lot of people talk about some of the recent developments, about experience, etc. You get to see all of the vendors in the area, so you get to see all the software, the tools, the technology that exists. What you don't get to see, which would be, I think would be a lot better, is kind of like networking with a lot of other planners and schedulers. You have to, don't get me wrong, you can do that, but you have to actively go out about it.
Yeah, you got to get outside your bubble a little bit.
Exactly.
Dale, what are your big thoughts from the Project Expo so far?
The Expo, it's great. I think, those that know about the Expo, it's huge in the UK.
Very big.
We get massive numbers there. It's at an iconic Wembley Stadium. It's in its infancy in the US, in Dubai as well, and Australia, and it's growing. It's fantastic because I think it brings the community together, as you're saying. And you find as you go around the world that the challenges are actually the same, right? And sharing ideas, thoughts, remedies creates a bit of perspective for everyone and allows us to tackle these challenges as a community rather than as individuals. So that's my key benefits of coming to things like this.
Yeah,
I'll take that point for a second. Like something that's generally never taught when you kind of an individual contributor and you go into management is serendipity. So it's the fortunate occurrence because of an action that you took. So you don't know what you don't know. So coming to these events, you might meet someone who can join your team. You can also meet some vendors that you might not know, like certain technology exists. It's really about broadening the horizon and creating the opportunity for upside. The downside is 2 days of your time. So what? Like, you're never going to remember 2 days. But for me, I come to a lot of these because I just like to learn about what other people are thinking and about advancements.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I mean, if you're not in rail, you can talk to people who are in rail. Or if you're not in nuclear, you meet people who talk about nuclear. And then the beauty of the vendors that are here is they cover all industries. And that you can end up talking with them about how they're looking at different industries that are happening. So I think that's really cool. I just think it's also cool to see the scope of things. The sheer amount of people that are in our industry, the things that they are doing, and the niches they're carving out. It just blows me away every time I come.
Yeah, you're right. And one of the things that I think I'd like to see more of, and I think we get it right in the UK, is more younger people at these conferences, right? Encouraging the younger generation to come in. So, if you ask, early years in your career in project controls, planning, just in this space in project delivery, get yourself along to this, because this isn't just a ticket. This is an investment in you and your career because you get to rub shoulders with decision makers, VPs. You know, it's a really good place for that.
Do you know, thinking about that, what I'd love to see? I'd love to see, like, I'm fine with a day of lectures and this kind of thing, but I'd love to see a day of workshops where you're just thrown together on a table of 10 random people, all the way from VP to like a graduate, and you're trying to solve problems. And in that environment, like, I don't know, you could get a guest speaker or a lecturer in to set problems. And I would imagine that would be a phenomenal learning experience.
Yeah.
I just haven't seen that.
It's almost like a hackathon,
Yeah,
but geared specifically towards project management, project controls. So it's almost like a Beyond Deadlines episode where we give a hypothetical. You know, we say, hey, here's, you know, a project that's 6 months delayed. And you get a set of fake project data and some other stuff, and then you come up with solutions, and then they're judged. I feel like we've talked about it before a couple times.
This could be an idea. I don't know. Maybe we do this.
Yeah, but it's exciting because what you're talking about, I was recently at a conference in London, and Harry Redknapp, who's an ex-Premier League soccer for the Americans, football for the Brits, ex-manager. And he was saying back in the olden days, the reserve team, the youth team, and the first team players used to all train together. And they used to mix the teams, and then you'd have the first team players coaching during practice, the youth team and the reserve team players. You don't get that anymore. And to your point, if you had that type of a workshop, imagine just in that one day how much collective knowledge you're passing on to the next generations, because you don't get that exposure naturally. It takes years to accumulate some of the experience that some of the folks have that are around you.
It doesn't. In a lot of these companies, like, there's a hierarchy, so you just wouldn't naturally get that crossover. It's like, okay, so you're a graduate, you get put on a table with the big VP of projects. Like, you're going to feel a little intimidated, and you're not going to want to contribute. Whereas if it's a group of 10 random people, yes, you'll eventually be like, oh, where do you work? And then you know, you could. As annoying as the kind of games are, it's like, okay, tell 3 things that you think everyone should know about planning and scheduling, and it's like sharing that level of knowledge, and also the contacts.
The contacts are great, but also the key thing that I've noticed here and some of the other conferences in London and elsewhere, there's a lot of technology vendors. The London one, there's also a lot of consultancies there in terms of showcasing.
They do a lot of recruiting in London.
Yeah, there's a lot of recruitment happening as well.
One idea that I had for this was also, you know, you get to see.
We are live.
We are live. This will be edited out later, or it won't be.
We'll leave it in.
We'll let the announcement roll.
Oh, there's an iPad giveaway going on at the moment.
We're not giving away an iPad.
No.
I already got an iPad this week.
Did you?
Yeah, because I need to draw all the diagrams for the book.
Okay, so back at it, folks. Where my brain was is kind of hashing out this potential idea we're talking about is also software.
Yeah.
A lot of times you don't get to access or use software until you've gone through a long procurement process, or your company's brought it in, and all you ever really get is the sales pitch. A lot of software is hard to onboard, but this could be an opportunity where you actually would get hands-on with, you know, a Nodes and Lengths or a Safran Risk or whatever it is, and you actually get to go use it and get, you know, dirty, figure it out. I think it'd be brilliant.
Yeah, I think that's right. And we're fortunate, you know, we know and love Greg, and he often bounces ideas off of us, but not everyone has access to that. You know, there's other tech companies, not all of them, but tech companies that do reach out and go, what do you think? And they take that feedback on board. But I do agree with you, because, you know, especially with the younger generation, they're going to be in 5-10 years time in these decision-making positions on projects. They need to know how the tech's going to work, but if they have skin in the game of going, I've actually helped design the future, because tech's here to stay.
Yeah.
Let's face it, right? You have to be literate, and you have to know what's in the market. And it's really difficult at the moment for a lot of people, because you'll know this firsthand, Greg, right? For the past sort of couple of years, if you said AI as a startup, people throwing money at you, it's sort of dried up a little bit, but there's so many startups in the market at the moment. It's like, where do you start for someone that doesn't know the landscape?
Yeah, we're definitely going through a wave in the market right now. It's like all of the consolidation happened with the P6 generation and the Fuse generation and all of this, where there was actually a lot of products, and then it consolidated, and now we're in kind of the big boom again, and it will consolidate. But you're right. Like, obviously, I run a scheduling AI software company. Like, why I come to these events because I like to speak to people and I like to learn and things. But why my team's here is for two reasons. One is to actually just have more conversations with actual schedulers that they'll have in a month. So if you think about it, you'll have 100 people passing by, and it's not a sales pitch. Like the best sale is actually one where someone asks, "Can I please work with you because you solve a problem?" You don't have to force it. So actually, it's people going like, "What are your challenges? What do you spend the most time doing? What's really difficult in your day job? Like, what have you worked on the last 6 months?" It's these kinds of questions just to really understand from 100, 200 people what life is like on a daily basis. Like, the listeners of this will know what their life is like on a daily basis. But if you're building a product, you're not selling to one person, you're selling to 1,000, 1,000,000 people. So you need to know a lot. And then the second element is actually just to meet with people we already know. So we'll already have customers, and they'll be a world away and they'll be traveling or whatever. So we actually just meet to get to know people. Very little actual selling happens at these events. Like you said, the selling is much more process driven. It's in procurement, it's in IT, it's in information security, and all of these kinds of things. This is actually more a learning experience and a meeting and bonding experience than anything else.
I really like what you said there, and I think that can actually be took, through the lens of if you are running a company or have a company and attending one of these events, but it can also be took through the lens of an individual.
Yeah.
So if you're coming here to these events, if you're treating this as like a learning event, you have to be a bit outgoing. You have to get out of your shell. You have to talk to people. But when you do that, I mean, you can unlock some serious doors, learn a ton of stuff, and meet a ton of people. And then those conversations are just, soft networks that you build that will multiply over time.
I bumped into someone the other day who asked me one of the best questions, and actually it's such a perfect question. Like, what is your job? And I was like, job's this. And they were like, how did you get there? And I was like, oh, I did this. And they were like, I'm here. What would your advice to me be to get promoted? And I was like, there's zero to lose there because I'm not in their business. I'm not, and it's just a genuine opinion. Imagine coming here and just chatting to a bunch of people, finding the people who have progressed and been promoted and achieved and that kind of thing, and then just asking 10 people how they got there, and then asking for a piece of advice. You're going to walk away, like, let's say you're on, in the US, something like 100K, and you want to get to 200K. You find 10 people at 200K, you're going to learn so much.
Oh, yeah.
The other aspect on learning, and we're probably conscious because I think you got to go in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I've got to do a presentation.
We are live, so Greg's going to go present. But you presented yesterday.
I did.
But your presentation, I think, was probably not like any other presentation yesterday or today that would have happened,
Surprise.
Right? Because literally you called it a lecture, right?
It was a lecture.
It was almost a thought experiment where you were sharing your ideas on the premise of the book that you're writing and getting feedback from that. And I listened to the audience streaming out and the comments and the feedback that you got to keep going and giving everyone something different to think about. Do you want to give a quick elevator sort of pitch, a minute or so, on what those thoughts were? Because I thought that was actually...
Before he does that, we have a full episode on that.
Oh, you do?
Too. We'll include it in the link on it. But give your pitch.
Well, what I was thinking is one of the most difficult things that you can do in scheduling is acceleration. And there isn't a recipe book. So I was kind of like, think of it, if I want to bake a cake, I can buy a recipe book. It says, this is what you need. These are the steps you go through. This is the temperature you set your oven to. Do this, and the cake will turn out. And there isn't that kind of book in the project or scheduling space. It's all kind of general guidelines, like PMBOK principles, these kinds of things. But if you're someone who's executing projects on a daily basis, I can't open the PMBOK and go, that's what I do. It's just like a general things I need to consider.
You can't find the recipes either.
No.
It'll tell you how to set it up, but you're like, hey, I want to accelerate my project. I want to reduce spend. I want to turn these knobs to get these outputs. You're not going to find it.
So that's essentially it. And yesterday, what I was using it for is, I don't know if this is going to be valuable to people. Like like it logically makes sense, but logic doesn't always prevail, or you're missing a piece of information. So yesterday I was just really honest. I was like, I'm really passionate about this. I'm writing a book about this. I just want your advice whether or not I should continue putting effort into this, or I should just sack it all in. And I just shared the ideas, and the vast majority of people were like, "Oh, I'm genuinely interested in this. I think you should keep going." And that's just, again, a point of learning feedback. And I was also testing as well if it was too complex and people didn't understand, because then that means that I'm not at the right level. Like I'm maybe not explaining it in the right way. So I was just using it as a learning experience for myself.
Yeah, awesome. I think you're about to get whipped
I'm
off.
about to get hooded. Right. I'm going to leave you guys because I have to go and do another presentation.
You got a substitute, a replacement coming in?
Yeah, we got Andy Willman.
Wait, for those that don't know, who's Andy Woolman?
I have no idea.
Me neither.
I don't know.
I think
don't know.
no one knows who Andy Woolman is.
Really? Andy Willman is the producer of Top Gear and Grand Tour that was never actually seen in the show. He was the guy always handing the envelopes. And the Andy Willman of our world is Olli.
Out with
Olli.
the old, in with the new.
There you go.
Olli Willman. I think it succeeded.
Yeah. So, how's it gone? We've been chatting about the expo conferences and the advantages and disadvantages. Greg shared some of his thoughts on his lecture yesterday. Some people fell asleep. Almost.
I was awake the entire time. How dare you? How dare you?
No. If Greg was here, I'd tell him the same.
Kick things off. Introduce yourself for the people who don't know.
Hello, Olli Wade, Chief Exec of Movar.
Very good. Very good.
Nice and slick.
Yeah. It's an interesting space, actually. We're just discussing with expos and getting younger folk back in, because there's quite a few there's not enough young folk at the conferences. And we're saying in London we get far more, although we could do more as well. What's takeaways that you've seen, Olli, I guess, from the conferences that you've been to? Because you've been to a number across the world as well. What are the key themes that you can share with the audience?
I think first and foremost, if you're going to do a conference, you need to remember that you're pitching to various audiences. And one of the fundamentals of people taking stands is that they're trying to make sure that their product becomes known in the industry, hopefully gets bought, and hopefully starts to make ground. So there's that side that really needs to be honored. They pay a lot of money for a stand. You want to make sure that they get the right footfall to support them having a stand in the first instance. The other side of that equation is youngsters. I really think that these sort of events have a real opportunity to provide some real professional development for youngsters, and also networking opportunity where they have the opportunity to get brave, speak to people they haven't spoken to before, start asking questions at tables, learning lots, and then attending the talks. And that's a massive part of it. You need people to be attending the talks because that's where the real learning happens.
Now, Olli, you are excellent at meeting people where they are, communicating, introducing yourselves. For those younger people who are listening, or the people who are a little bit shy, what are your top 2 or 3 tips to kind of get that conversation started, get rolling? I've seen you work in the workshop all day today. You're pretty slick at it. So how can people be like you?
The first thing to say is I don't think I am slick. I just think that I'm a little bit more braver than others. That's probably the best way to describe it. I think that you have to park egos at the door, for one. You can't think, oh, I can't go talk to him, he's too senior. I'm not talking to them, they're too junior. Just park that. It's a level playing field. There's just people in a room. That's all you have to think about. From that perspective, the next thing is be brave enough to go over, make eye contact, and make a clean handshake with a smile. Anybody that takes a clean handshake with a smile is willing to have a chat. And that's just the way it is. So you almost just have to be brave and accept the fact that you're going to go, hey, who are you? I don't know who you are.
Tell me about yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think we've certainly spoken about on Project Chat, and I think you have as well, around, sort of connecting and building relationships as well, where what is the most interesting topic to anyone in the world?
Themselves,
right? Hey, Micah, how are you? Tell me about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do? Right? And if you don't want to ask the what do you do question, because that's often very boring, you go, where's your favorite place to go on holiday? There's a topic that, hey, do you know what? I'm new in town. Do you have any places to recommend I go and eat?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, the work-based discussion is actually a secondary goal.
Yeah.
If you're just focusing on the fact that you just want to meet new people and get to know something else about the industry, an open chat is the best way to go. Don't come with an agenda. Don't bother introducing yourself as anything special. Just go and have a chat.
Yeah, and that in a way will make you special because you're not trying to put yourself on a pedestal.
And I speak on my behalf. I don't like anybody doing a hard sell with me.
Right.
So I don't want anybody. I don't want to sell hard to anybody either. And the moment you're hard selling, people see through it.
What is hard selling for those that don't know?
So if you go over and you say, "Hey, I'm Olli Wade, and I sell this wonderful stuff. You should be buying it from me." That's the wrong conversation to have. Getting to know people on a more level playing field, getting to know what makes people tick, what makes them happy, what makes them sad, what are the things that excite them, what are the things that bore them. That's where you learn how to address your own conversation with different people, because you actually start to recognize those personalities.
Yeah.
For
And you,
sure.
Micah, I haven't asked you. You asked me.
Yeah.
We're both interviewing each other, I guess.
For sure. Yeah. Who is the actual interviewer here? Hey.
You can be the host with the most. What have you taken away from not just this conference, but the other conferences you go around? And you've traveled the world a bit as well. You've been on stage, speaking in the likes of the Indias, etc. What are for those that haven't done the circuit, so to speak? What are the themes? What are the key things that you take away?
To me, just kind of following on what you were saying, is getting kind of tactical. The follow-up is super key. I mean, kind of staying on that thread of like, you've gone to the workshop, you've met a lot of people. One thing that I used to struggle with that I get better at now is, I have a list of all the people I talk to, and I have some emails and some contacts information, and I just reach back out to them and I just throw them a softball. Like, hey, I'd love to connect, have another chat, follow up, or hey, you made this interesting point, we should discuss it. Or if I can provide some value, just like, hey, this is something that I've done you may find interesting, or like, hey, this is the Project Chatter podcast. So kind of providing some value and just continuing that discussion. I think it's super tremendous, and it keeps those conversations going, and you kind of can build your network out afterwards, because more often than not, people just hop on planes after this, and you forget and you're gone, and and so keeping that network alive is very important.
I think the other thing to be memorable as well is, the way I like to think about it, is we all have buckets, right? And whether it's a bucket filled with water or sand, doesn't matter what it's filled with. But when I talk to you or you, either I am taking from your bucket or I'm filling it up.
Yeah.
And so if you just think of that simply, when you're interacting with someone, if you're filling someone's bucket up with good stuff, with good value, they're going to remember you, right? And don't think too hard about it, right? Because the way I'm filling your bucket up is by me learning about you,
Yeah.
right? And if someone's interested in you, that fills up your bucket. You're like, holy crap, I'm really interested in me and what I'm doing. And that attention, that just connects on a human level. And I think that's often overlooked at things like this, where you've got to be professional.
Yeah. I was just about to say that a big part of that is humor. You can talk to somebody that you've never met before, and if you can crack a joke where the two of you can have a laugh, you reach a different level of understanding really quickly with each other. And that gets you onto quite a strong playing field, where you actually want to be in each other's company. And when you want to be in each other's company, good stuff happens. The other thing is that there are other ways to be memorable. My way is to wear a baseball cap, which I had to take off because obviously I just had my hair and makeup done to come on. Yeah,
But important.
Thank goodness for that.
It's an improvement.
Not much fun, but it's passable.
We can't all look as chiseled as Micah.
That'd be impossible.
Easy.
Last night at the networking dinner, what did you get? You got Christian Bale.
They said I look like a banana.
Not banana?
A banana. Yep.
Christian Bale
sounds
and
about right.
Christian Banana Bale.
Christian Bale and Chris Hemsworth, apparently. Ladies and gents, you let us know.
None
what
of the above. None of the above. I look like a banana. Yeah, I guess going back to your earlier question about themes, one theme I get over and over and over again is projects are delivered late.
Yeah.
It's just a common thread of, is that project on time? Nope. And I would say that's probably the other big takeaway, is that's what people are experiencing, late projects. And it's just, I think, a massive issue in the industry and across industries and across sectors and across whether you're doing a high-level schedule, a low-level schedule, or you're doing advanced work packaging, whatever it is, it's there, it's an issue. And so that's one, common thread of a conversation that I hear over and over again.
I had a fascinating conversation with someone last night around resource loading a schedule. And maybe this is one where we can debate on this podcast, where he asked me, sort of, because he's US based, asked me in the UK, is it common for, depending on where you're on the supply chain, is it common to find resource loaded schedules? And I said, no. I said, why is that? I said, I think for two reasons primarily. One, if you have a 40,000 line schedule and you want to resource load that with proper hours and go one step further and add rates, and then it's cost loaded, etc., to maintain that, by the time you've updated it all and resource leveled it and all of that, you're on the next update cycle. But also there's not enough people that know how to do that properly. And whilst there is value in doing that, my sort of, and maybe this one for the audience as well, where usually if someone wants to resource load, I'm like, at summary level, do it at that level. But what's your take on it? I mean, you're the scheduling expert here, Micah. How do you approach something like that if someone asks you what to do?
Generally, for most projects, it's a no, because there's not a value add. Are you going to bill out of the schedule? If you are, you're really going to operationalize that, like you said. And so to me, it just comes down to, and then also, do you have a mature scheduling program, right? Like if you have a well-developed, I have lots of schedulers and we're moving along, but a lot of people try and jump too far ahead too quickly. We're just getting into Primavera P6, now it's resource load schedules. I mean, that's just a total different bear. So to me, generally, you do want to time phase money at a certain point, but you don't necessarily always have to do that in the schedule. That can be done elsewhere. So it's just kind of figuring out what are the needs of the project and how do those fit in, and then figuring out that way.
Where is the elsewhere? So those going, okay, if I'm not going to resource load my schedule, I'm just looking at resources for now. How do I manage my resources?
Well, it depends, again, is this an owner schedule? Because this is an owner's level schedule. They're not managing resources. They're not telling, hey, I need this electrician. They're monitoring them. So can you get that out of other reports? Can you get that out of other means and methods? The little gate scanners or the Bluetooth things in the helmets. If you're doing cost and payment, is that happening in another system? Is that in a Hexagon or a Procore or whatever, and you're facilitating your invoice over in like Oracle or whatever? Then you end up like duplicating data in systems. If the owner just needs a very simple high-level cash flow, can you get it done in Excel? Not everything has to be this interconnected global system, depending on the project. So to me, it's just really a value conversation. Like, what is the need and how does it create value? And sometimes you do end up with like resource loading schedules, and other times it doesn't really make sense. But I think where you run into issues are the people who are either one way or the other. They're like, anytime anyone's super adamant about one thing and they don't bend, that.
But the biggest thing is also the contract. I know in the UK, NEC is massive. You're telling us that the majority in the US are bespoke contracts, I think. And that often is a minefield, because for me, certainly in the UK, if you have NEC contracts, does it stipulate you have to resource load or not? And then also, I was having a chat and saying, if you have the supply chain, right, typically the main contractor doesn't even have their own resources. They're using their subbies, and the subbies are using subbies as well. And so if you're a scaffolding company, you're not going to resource load a schedule and pass it up the chain. I've got this is my crew. I know how to put scaffolding up. I know when to take it down. I know the rhythm I'm going to do it in. Why do I have to put it in a schedule that's linked to activities? Right? What's the value add?
And the big driver there is understanding what you're trying to achieve by resource loading. So if you're using resource loading for the purpose of making sure you've got the correct personnel at the right place at the right time, you can understand that they're having that level of detail is important. Doing it in Primavera P6, I don't think is necessarily the right place to do it, because the only person who can administer that is a P6 administrator.
Creates a bottleneck.
All of a sudden, you've got one person that has to be the center of everything. Now, in reality, if you look at projects where you have frustrated project managers, they look at the schedule, they get tired of not being able to update the schedule that they want to be updated. What do? They go into MSP, they go into Excel, they'll do something else because they're not getting what they need because of that bottleneck. Now, if you're bringing the added complexities of resource and cost loading into that, you've just frustrated the project team even more. So that's a massive part of decision making in that space, is what are you actually trying to achieve with it?
And that decision has to happen. You want it to happen early.
Yeah.
You want to get that, whatever that capability you're going to bring, the earlier you can get that decided and figured out, it just creates everything so much easier downstream.
Yeah. And from a planning perspective, I think that if you look at the planning products that are on the market, there are effectively two types of planning products that are available at the moment. There's task-based planning, which is what Primavera actually is, and then there's resource-based planning products. Now the resource-based planning products, they're actually not very good at managing tasks. So what are you trying to achieve? Which way around are you trying to achieve?
If you add in, this is fascinating actually. If you think about it, for me, the past couple of years, I'd say probably 99% of software vendors focus on one of two things: schedule or risk. Not many at all focus on cost in the AI tech space. Is it in the too difficult box? Is it we don't have enough data? What do you think?
Yeah, I wish Greg could come back and answer that question. But to me, where that is, people have to create products that people will buy. And I think when you start adding in all of those modules, those move more towards like an overall portfolio management solution and can get confusing. And so a lot of people that what I see with the problem they're trying to solve is make scheduling easier. And so they're either, going down the route of kind of just creating a better looking Primavera P6, or they're saying, okay, we're going to go boots on the ground and basically take agile pull planning and make it digital. But that also leaves out cost. Like those solutions don't really start to, implicate cost. And so I just think they're probably going after what people want, and more of that is on the planning side than on the cost side.
So I've got a slightly different perspective on that. Certainly from my side, when I look at cost management and the technology improvements that can and are being made, one of the fundamental reasons that cost information doesn't become shared and learned from in the same way that schedule information is used is because of commercial sensitivities, where people are protective over that information because they consider that's how they build up their price point to tender for projects. So why on earth are they going to give that to anybody? And in reality, and in most instances where you see people or fraternities attempting to gather that information sharing is a hot button. It's not something that's easy because people do feel they're giving away their commercial advantage.
Yeah, it's a really tough one. I think unless you're on a cost plus contract, it's really difficult. And I was chatting to someone, and Micah, you'll know this is true. US, so they were saying it's predominantly lump sum. Is that true? Fixed price? Or
no, it's all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But you'd imagine though, if you're on fixed price, you don't want to give away the game, right?
Yeah. No, you definitely don't. I mean, and contract plays into a big piece of what solution you pick, like we were talking about earlier. Yeah. I mean, if you are on a lump sum, I've been on some lump sum fixed price contracts where they're like, why do we need to give you a schedule? We're going to hand you the keys and you're going to move along. And I'm like, the squeaky wheel, like, well, are you going to make it? How can you prove that you're going to make it? And then you get into those sorts of conversations.
Yeah. And then that's a different conversation around rules of credit.
Yes.
And if you don't get that into your management arrangements as part of the contract, you've just undermined everything you've got in front of you. And if they do give you a lump sum with a finished milestone and that's that, and you've not done anything to protect yourself as a client, theoretically, you've got no real room to move.
Yeah.
That's the trick. So what happens in most contracts, because of the adversarial environment that it creates, is that it ends up going down the other route, where you end up having to give 74 milestones for something that has 500 activities, right? And all of a sudden, you've just watered down the whole purpose of the schedule.
Yeah.
So there's a balance to be struck, and I think the only way that happens is through legitimate management arrangements. You actually set it out at the appropriate level for the project you're dealing with.
Yeah.
It's not one size fits all.
Right.
Yeah. I guess that's the exciting thing about projects, because it's not one size fits all. It actually applies to all facets of projects. I was, again, the same gentleman I was chatting to about resource loading schedules, and, we're chatting about, having the perfect schedule. And I said, even if you have the perfect schedule, that's not the silver bullet. There isn't a silver bullet to improve projects. Because if you think about, Yet we love the triple constraint. We love triangles, right? It's people, processes, and technology.
I don't like that triangle.
What is it for you then? You have a square, a hexagon, a circle?
I don't know. Yeah. Well, no, actually, I really do like that triangle, because my favorite saying is that you'll go sit down, and the cost team will put together their estimate, and it's always, at the very beginning, plus or minus 30%. It's like, okay, here's our estimate, plus or minus 30%. And then the scheduler walks in the room and is like, on June 14th at 2 p.m. In 2026 is when we'll deliver this project. It's like, but this guy is going to change the scope and it's never minus, it's always plus. This person's going to change the scope by 30%, and you're still going to hit June 2nd. And it's like, yeah, so I like the triangle, but I don't think it's often applied correctly, where people aren't looking at it in the same regard. So, and some people do, but if you have a 30% contingency on cost, you should have a 30% contingency in something.
Yeah.
Because you're
they
taking,
go hand in hand, don't they?
Yeah. And it, they don't have to be exact, but you should have some sort of wiggle room, because you're allowing the project to wiggle. And then you're like, oh, wow, why is my project late? Well, you changed 20% scope.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, because what I did once is I took two triangles and I made a star out of it. So one was cost, schedule, quality, or scope, whichever way you want to do it. And then the other one was people, process, technology.
Yeah.
And I overlaid that. And I was like, you can look at just cost or scope or schedule, and you can look at all three, but if you forget about the people and the processes and the rest, then you're missing a big trick as well.
I mean, just like we were talking about with the cost loading on the process, like it's, a lot of times they just write it in the contract, like, yeah, you'll, cost load by subcontractor, and, it's a 3-page document, but they don't actually think about the process in which that's going to happen. And going back to your scaffolding comment, can this process actually work with the people and technology that we have? And I think there needs a really good bottoms-up evaluation when you're going to go do that sort of project, to think about it. Because if you can't, like, why would you set yourself up for failure? Why would you be like, hey, go resource load this schedule down to and you're like, the person's going to fall flat on their face. Why are you doing that?
Yeah, exactly. You know what I would love to see? I would love to see the product providers that we've got in the room today actually collaborating and working together to establish what that silver bullet could be. There are 10 schedule-based tools on display. There are 5 ERM and ERP type environments that are being displayed. And there's some document management type environments being displayed, and there's some consultants being displayed. Well, actually, why are we all competing over the same ground, right?
You said something interesting earlier. You said project control shouldn't be needed on projects at the Project Controls Expo.
Yeah, it's a brave statement, and maybe even a stupid one. But in essence, what I mean by that is that project teams should be empowered to deliver. And in doing that, if you think about planning, having a P6 planning fraternity who nobody else can actually influence or edit is a service to a project that might not be required if the project management and delivery teams were P6 capable. You don't need to have P6 planners. You need to have P6 capable people, or another tool. It doesn't have to be P6, right? There are other scheduling tools available. So in that instance, I think that the project teams have the opportunity to be better upskilled. And go back 30 years. Did project controls as a service exist?
I don't know. It wasn't a lot of them. I'm just kidding. I was.
But the short answer,
How old are you?
The short answer is that predominantly no, it didn't exist. Were projects delivered on time and on budget? The short answer is not really. Sometimes yes. Are we any better off now that we've created whole project controls functions?
Yeah.
And my anecdotal answer is no.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about project controls is, there's kind of like one track for a project manager, and that's kind of how they deliver. But then you get into project controls, and you have what I'll call like the hands-off auditor.
Yeah.
And those can audit in 2 different ways. So they can be a hands-off auditor that's just auditing, is the process set up right? And there can be the hands-off auditor that like, is the data right?
Yeah.
Are you delivering your project on time? And then that would be like on one end of the spectrum of like, we don't touch it, we just audit, blah, blah, blah. Then you have on the whole other end of the spectrum, kind of probably like what you're more alluding to, which would be better, is like they're actually in the project, creating value, working with the project teams. A mouse just ran by, folks. We just saw a little furry friend cut by on the floor. But I think that's on one end of the spectrum, is like where, and it's not really project controls as we would say it. It's more you're integrated into the project team and you're providing value.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't mean that project controls consulting dies as a service. That's not really what I'm saying yet.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is that it becomes far more integrated with delivery. It's not a standalone service provider. It's an integrated function.
No, it's there's so much to talk about. There's so much to solve in a sense as well with the challenges we have on projects and products that we have in the market, because they don't all talk to each other at the moment, and they need to in some way, shape or form, and they're getting better, but we're not there yet. We spoke to Greg about, wading through the different options to someone that doesn't know the landscape, and it's tricky. But I think it's an exciting space to be in. I can't even talk anymore. But just briefly, because I don't know how long we want to do this podcast for. This
I think
episode.
we're about to run out of power.
We're probably about to run out of power, but we do want to probably pay a little bit of attention to where we are, because this is amazing. We're at the Washington Nationals baseball team stadium.
Baseball park,
and this is amazing. Just next to us, you can't see it, but it's got all the trophies and caps and all sorts of things. Micah's been upskilling me on what the different the rules of the game are and what makes baseball exciting. Not that much, but
oh, come on, easy now.
It's fantastic. It's an absolute. We were treated. We actually went to where the pros warm up. And we hit some balls. We went out onto the pitch. We managed to pitch some balls.
Pitch, for those who are listening who are American, that's called the playing field.
Oh, is it the playing field? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Out onto the field,
We're out to the field, the one with the grass.
So it's a field for playing on. So it's a playing field.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm glad we cleared that up.
Thanks, so.
We went into the bullpen, the pit. What do you call it, where the players sit?
That would be, well, there is the bullpen.
Yeah.
The bullpen's out in a lot of times out in the outfield.
Yeah.
And then that's just like the bench, I would say.
Okay.
The dugout. It's called the dugout.
The dugout.
Yeah, it's been a long day, folks. I've been hanging out with European people all day. I'm losing my Americanisms.
But it's great. We managed to have a hot dog.
There you go.
At the ballpark.
But I mean, this is just a cool event and a cool space. And there's lots of other events like this. Project Expo, I think, is coming back next year.
There's an awards as well.
There's
submit.
So it's one of the things is people are looking at where should I go. Make sure you pick someplace interesting as well too.
And a big call out for me is also for businesses to bring their youngsters to these events. It's treated as CPD for your business. Get your youngsters at the event. Get them into the talks. Get them socializing. Get them networking. Get them used to putting themselves in a position they're not comfortable with. But the only way that you can do that as an employer is getting them involved.
Yeah, just usually budget for it. As long as you ask your boss and get approved, I'm sure you can get at least one in per year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And make sure it's the Project Expo.
Yeah, but if not, invest in yourself, as we're saying, right? It's maybe a couple of $100, and it's money well worth.
I mean, you're going to spend the same amount of money picking up a certificate, so don't pick up that one certificate and go to a workshop.
Absolutely. So, for the Project Chatter listeners, where can we find Beyond Deadlines?
Anywhere. Just type in Beyond Deadlines on YouTube or Spotify, and you'll find it. And for the Beyond Deadlines listeners, where can we find Project Chatter?
Exactly the same place, Spotify, YouTube, etc. It's great to see you and meet you in person.
I love this collabo episode. We'll put links to both of ours and wherever it goes. And so whichever one you want to jump on, we'll be able to get it on. Olli, thanks for coming on and stepping in on the hot seat.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, and awesome.
All right. So for us from Beyond Chatter, have a good one. And we'll see you on the next one.
Bye for now.
Cheers all.